Every wooden wall balcony you have ever seen on a castle is a fake, not a scam, a rebuild. The famous galleries at Carcassonne, modern. The ones in Wales, 1990 something. Every hoarding on every castle wall you have ever photographed was raised by modern hands, because the real ones were wood. And wood does not last 800 years, almost never. But in one quiet French town, the real thing is still up there, the actual 13th century oak, still pegged to a stone tower, dated by science to around 1220. Historians call it an almost unique structure in France. This is the closest thing on earth to an original medieval hoarding, and the story of why it survived is even better than the fact that it did. Here's why that should stop you. A hoarding was never built to last. It was the castle's wooden armor, a covered timber gallery that hung off the wall top so defenders could reach the one place arrows couldn't. The dead ground at the very foot of the wall, where the ladders and the miners gathered. But wood is a problem. It rots, it burns. One fire arrow and your defense is a bonfire, so most hoardings were provisional, thrown up when an army appeared on the horizon, then pulled down again in the peacetime so the timber wouldn't rot on the wall. Temporary by design, which means, by every rule of survival, almost no original hoarding should still exist. They should be gone, rotted, burned or dismantled centuries ago, and almost all of them are, except at Laval, in the west of France. Look up at the round stone keep, some 30-odd meters of it, 14 across, its walls nearly 3 meters thick at the base. A fortress has watched this hill above the river since about the year 1020. But this stone tower is younger, around 1218. A new lord arrived from the king's own circle, Mathieu II of the great Montmorency family, and raised it. And then he did the thing almost no other tower has kept. He crowned it in a wooden gallery of oak. That gallery is still there. Not a copy, not a Victorian guess, the actual 13th century timber. So why did this one survive when every other rotted or came down? Here is the secret, and it's beautiful in its simplicity. Laval's gallery was never meant to be temporary. Almost every other hoarding was provisional, up for a war, down for peace. Laval's was built as a permanent part of the tower, in the very same push of construction as the stone beneath it. It wasn't armor you bolted on and took off again. It was part of the castle. It was built to stay. And so it stayed. And what a thing to stay. Look closely. And it is a masterpiece of carpentry, with not a single nail in sight. 2 great wheels of oak, carpenters call them ring frames, are stacked one above the other and locked onto a huge central post, like the hub and spokes of a cartwheel turned into a building. 40 timbers fan out to the rim, and around the whole crown runs a wall of solid oak planks, each more than 20 centimeters thick, a wooden battlement that has taken 800 years of weather and is still up. Every joint is cut wood into wood, pegged tight, no iron, no bolts, just oak, and the hands of a 13th century master carpenter. But hang on, remember the promise from the start. By every rule, this gallery should be dust. Every other one rotted, burned, or came down. So the question that's been hanging over this whole video is a simple one. How does anyone actually know that oak is 800 years old and not quietly swapped in later? Here's the answer, and it's brilliant. You don't date the castle. You date the wood itself. Every tree lays down 1 ring a year, fat in kind years, thin in dry ones, so a region and an era leave a fingerprint in the rings. Match your beam's pattern to a master timeline built from thousands of other timbers, and you can pin the exact calendar years that tree was alive. And if the very last ring under the bark has survived, you get the precise year it was felled. In 2004, 2 scientists, Vincent Bernard and Yannick Ledigal, from a laboratory in Rennes, climbed the tower and took their samples. A second campaign refined it in 2011. Their verdict: the oak was cut around 1220, the same moment as the stone it sits on. The armor is exactly as old as the wall it guards. And here's the detail I love. Tucked in among that original oak are a few younger timbers, repairs, tree ring, dated to the 1330s and 40s. Read that again. More than 100 years after it was first built, someone was still up there patching the gallery, keeping it sound. This was never a relic that got forgotten on top of a tower. It was cared for generation after generation, which is exactly why it is still with us. And the others are dust. Now, if you go digging, you'll read that England has one too, the North Tower of Stokesay Castle. And this is where an honest history channel has to slow down. Stokesay is lovely, but it was never really a fortress. It was a rich wool merchant's fortified manor house. And that famous timber top is a comfortable overhanging story, not a war gallery built to drop stones on an army. Its military credentials are politely contested, so strip out the maybes and the manor houses, and Laval stands almost alone, not the boast of the only one on earth, the honest version, an almost unique surviving original, and the clearest real war hoarding left standing anywhere, which brings us back to all those postcard galleries. Carcassonne, Reconstructions. The Great Restoration that was begun by Viollet-le-Duc from 1853, but the wooden hoardings you photograph today were actually added later by his successor, Paul Boeswillwald. Clever work, placed by reading the surviving putlog holes, but modern timber, a modern best guess, even capped in northern slate on a southern fortress, a choice restorers still argue about. Carefully, in Wales, rebuilt in the 1990s, Castellcoch, 1875, they are beautiful, they are useful, and they are not old. When you photograph a hoarding, you are almost always photographing a modern imagination of one. There is one more place to keep your eye on. In a Burgundy forest, a team has spent nearly 30 years building a castle from nothing, using only 13th century tools and methods. No power, no steel, no shortcuts. It's called Guédelon. And the skills they've rediscovered there even helped rebuild Notre Dame after the 2019 fire, their wooden wall balconies. In the plans, not raised yet. So the next truly new original hoarding on Earth might just be built the medieval way, in our own lifetime, by people in a French wood. Time for What's Inspection. Undisputed surviving war hoardings. Essentially 1. Laval. It's oak, tree ring, dated to around 1220. Same as the keep. The genuine article. It's joinery. 40 oak timbers, 2 ring frames, 1 giant king post, not a nail in sight. Repairs. 1330s, still cared for. Everything at Carcassonne. A handsome 19th century rebuild. The verdict, 9 out of 10. The last of its kind, and it's still standing. So here's the strange part. Next time you pass a building site wrapped in tall temporary fencing or a giant roadside billboard, look at the word for it. In Britain, that fence, that billboard, is a hoarding. Same word. And it's no accident. It comes from an old French word, hoard, meaning a fence. The very same family as the castle's wooden gallery, not the messy house kind of hoarding. That one is a completely different word entirely. 8 centuries later, the wall balcony has vanished from almost every wall on Earth, but the name quietly survived. On the dull fence around your local building site, except on one round tower in France, where the real thing is still up there. Still oak, still pegged, still watching the horizon. Next time on Siegecraft. The most photographed hoardings on Earth were built in the 1800s, and their restorer made one mistake you can spot from the street. Every source is in the description. And what says? The fakes are lovely, but only one is the real thing. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.